My daughter blocked my number. Hi everyone! Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. The automated voice was so cold, so matter-of-fact. We're sorry, but the person you're trying to reach is not available. But I knew better. I'd heard that message enough times to recognize the particular tone, the specific phrasing that phone companies use when someone has deliberately blocked your number. It wasn't that Sarah wasn't available. It was that Sarah didn't want to hear from me. My hands were shaking as I ended the call and stared at my phone screen, at the familiar number I'd dialed thousands of times over the past 26 years. The same number I'd called when she was away at college and homesick, when she'd gotten her first job and wanted to celebrate, when she'd broken up with her high school boyfriend and needed someone to listen to her cry. Now that number might as well have belonged to a stranger. I set the phone down on my kitchen counter and tried to process what had just happened. My daughter, my only child, the person I'd devoted my entire adult life to loving and supporting, had blocked my number. She had taken a deliberate action to silence me, to cut me out of her life with the push of a button. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how we got here, I need to start at the beginning, with the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms and tell me I was the best mommy in the whole world. The early years. Sarah was born on a snowy February morning in 1998, arriving 3 weeks early and in a tremendous hurry to see the world. From the moment she entered this life, she was pure energy and determination. The nurses said they'd never seen a baby so alert, so focused, so ready to take on everything around her. I was 24 then, young and scared and absolutely unprepared for the tidal wave of love that hit me when they placed her in my arms. She was so small, so perfect, with tiny fists that gripped my finger like she never wanted to let go. In that moment, I made a promise to her that I would do whatever it took to give her the best life possible. Her father, Michael, had different ideas about parenthood. When Sarah was 18 months old, he decided that family life wasn't for him and walked away with barely a backward glance. "I'm not ready for this responsibility," he said, as if Sarah were a pet he'd grown tired of, rather than his own flesh and blood. So it became just the two of us against the world. Those early years were hard in ways I hadn't anticipated. Working full-time as a dental hygienist while raising a toddler alone meant constant juggling, constant exhaustion, constant worry about money and childcare, and whether I was doing everything wrong. But Sarah made it all worthwhile. She was such a bright, curious little thing, always asking questions, always exploring, always making me laugh even when I was running on 3 hours of sleep. I remember the morning she took her first steps. I was getting ready for work, rushing around the apartment, trying to find matching shoes and pack her diaper bag, when I turned around and saw her standing by the coffee table, wobbling but determined. She took one shaky step toward me, then another, then tumbled into my arms with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I called in sick to work that day. I didn't care that I couldn't afford to miss the pay. My daughter had just taken her first steps, and I wasn't going to miss a moment of that milestone. That became the pattern of our life. Sarah first, everything else second. When she started preschool and cried every morning at drop-off, I rearranged my schedule so I could spend extra time easing her transition. When she developed an obsession with dinosaurs at age 4, I took her to every museum within a 2-hour drive and learned more about paleontology than I'd ever thought possible. When she decided she wanted to learn piano, I worked extra shifts for 3 months to save up for lessons and a used keyboard. Looking back, I can see that I was probably overcompensating for Michael's absence. I was trying to be both parents, to fill every role, to make sure Sarah never felt like she was missing anything. But at the time, it just felt like love. Pure, uncomplicated, fierce maternal love. The school years. When Sarah started kindergarten, I was nervous about how she'd adjust to being away from me for full days. She'd always been a confident child, but she was also deeply attached to our routine, our closeness. I needn't have worried. Within a week, she was the classroom's unofficial leader, organizing games at recess and helping other kids with their shoelaces. Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, called me in for a conference after the first month. I was terrified that Sarah had done something wrong, but instead, Mrs. Henderson told me she was remarkably mature and empathetic for her age. "She's going to be special," Mrs. Henderson said. "You're raising a remarkable little girl." I carried those words with me for months, replaying them whenever parenting felt overwhelming. Sarah was special, and I was doing something right. The elementary years were some of the best of my life. Sarah thrived in school, making friends easily and excelling in her studies. She joined the soccer team, took art classes, participated in the school play. I was at every game, every performance, every parent-teacher conference. My world revolved around her schedule, her needs, her dreams. I remember the night before her 5th grade science fair. She'd been working on a project about plant growth for weeks, staying up late to water her bean sprouts and measure their progress. The night before the fair, she had a complete meltdown because she was convinced her project wasn't good enough. "Everyone else's projects are better," she sobbed into my shoulder. "I'm going to lose." I held her close and stroked her hair. "Sarah, sweetheart, you've worked so hard on this. Your project is amazing, and even if you don't win, I'm proud of you for trying." "But what if I embarrass myself?" "Then you'll learn something new, and you'll do better next time. That's what growing up is about." She pulled back and looked at me with those serious blue eyes that always made her seem older than her years. "Will you still love me if I don't win?" "I will love you no matter what happens tomorrow, or any day for the rest of our lives. Winning or losing doesn't change that." She won 2nd place, and her joy was so pure, so infectious, that I cried right there in the school gymnasium. But more than her success, I remember how she hugged me afterward and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me, Mom." Those were the moments that made all the sacrifices worthwhile. The teenage years. When Sarah hit 13, our relationship began to shift in ways that I knew were normal, but still found difficult to navigate. She became moodier, more private, more critical of everything I did. The little girl who used to curl up next to me on the couch for movie nights suddenly found my presence embarrassing. "Mom, you don't understand," became her favorite phrase. When I tried to help with homework, "You don't understand modern math." When I asked about her friends, "You don't understand teenage drama." When I suggested family activities, "You don't understand that I have my own life now." It stung, but I tried to remember what I'd been like at her age. I'd been difficult too, pushing boundaries and asserting my independence. This was normal, healthy even. Sarah was becoming her own person, and that was what I'd always wanted for her. But normal or not, those years were lonely. The child who had once shared everything with me now locked herself in her room for hours at a time. Our easy conversations were replaced by monosyllabic responses. The physical affection that had always been such a natural part of our relationship, hugs, cuddles, her hand in mine while we walked, became rare and awkward. I compensated by throwing myself into supporting her activities. When she joined the debate team, I attended every tournament, even the ones 3 hours away on Saturday mornings. When she developed an interest in photography, I bought her a professional-grade camera and signed up for classes so we could learn together. When she decided she wanted to be vegetarian, I completely changed how I cooked and shopped, learning dozens of new recipes to make sure she was getting proper nutrition. Looking back, I can see that I was probably being too accommodating, too eager to maintain our connection by giving her whatever she wanted. But I missed her so much, missed the closeness we'd had when she was little, and I was desperate to find ways to bridge the growing distance between us. The worst fight we had during those years was over her curfew. She was 15 and wanted to go to a party at a classmate's house. I said yes to the party, but insisted she be home by 11. She exploded. "All my friends get to stay out until midnight," she screamed. "You're so unfair. You treat me like I'm still a little kid." "I treat you like you're 15, I replied, trying to stay calm. 11 o'clock is reasonable for a school night. This is why I can't wait to get out of this house. You never trust me. You never let me do anything. You're ruining my social life." She stormed to her room and slammed the door so hard that a picture fell off the hallway wall. I spent the rest of the evening sitting on the kitchen floor, picking up pieces of broken glass, and wondering if I was really as terrible a mother as she seemed to think I was. The next morning, she came downstairs sheepishly and mumbled an apology. We never talked about the fight directly, but she seemed to make an effort to be less hostile for the next few weeks. I took it as progress. What I didn't understand then was that these fights weren't really about curfews or parties or permissions. They were about Sarah trying to figure out who she was separate from me, and my inability to give her the space she needed to do that. I was so afraid of losing her that I held on too tightly, which only made her pull away harder. High school and college, Sarah's junior year of high school, was when she really came into her own. She was editor of the school newspaper, captain of the debate team, and had a tight-knit group of friends who seemed to genuinely care about each other. She started talking about college plans, and I was so proud of her ambition and focus. We spent hours researching schools together, visiting campuses, filling out applications. It was some of the best time we'd had together in years, working toward a common goal, planning her future, dreaming about all the possibilities ahead of her. When the acceptance letters started arriving, Sarah was thrilled, but also stressed about making the right choice. She'd been accepted to several good schools, but her top choice was a private university about 4 hours away. It was expensive, more expensive than I could realistically afford, but she was passionate about their journalism program. "I know it's a lot of money, Mom," she said one evening as we sat at the kitchen table surrounded by financial aid forms and scholarship applications. "But I really think this is where I'm supposed to be." Looking at her face, so hopeful and determined, I knew I would find a way to make it work. I took out a second mortgage on the house, picked up extra shifts at work, and applied for every parent loan I could qualify for. Sarah would go to her dream school, no matter what it cost me. She cried when I told her I'd figured out the finances. "Thank you, Mom. I know this is a huge sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice," I said, meaning it completely. "It's an investment in your future. You're going to do amazing things." The day I dropped her off at college was one of the hardest days of my life. We'd spent the morning setting up her dorm room, meeting her roommate, attending orientation sessions. When it was time for parents to leave, Sarah hugged me tightly. "I'm going to miss you so much," she whispered. "I'm going to miss you too, sweetheart, but I'm so proud of you." I cried the entire 4-hour drive home, grieving the end of an era. For 18 years, being Sarah's mom had been my primary identity. Now she was beginning her adult life, and I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't needed every day. But we stayed close during her college years. She called regularly, sharing stories about classes and friends and professors. She came home for holidays and summer breaks, and although she seemed more sophisticated and independent each time, she was still my Sarah. We'd stay up late talking in the kitchen, and for those moments, it felt like we'd never been apart. When she graduated with honors and landed a job at a respected newspaper in a city 2 hours away, I was bursting with pride. My little girl had grown into an accomplished young woman, and I'd played a part in making that happen. The distance begins. The first few years after college were a period of adjustment for both of us. Sarah was establishing herself in her career, making new friends, dating seriously for the first time. I was learning how to have a life that didn't revolve around her schedule and needs. We talked on the phone once or twice a week, and I visited her new city a few times. She seemed happy and confident, thriving in her independence. I was proud of her, but also struggling with feelings of emptiness and purposelessness. My identity had been so wrapped up in being her mother that I barely knew who I was without her daily presence in my life. When Sarah was 24, she met David at a work conference. She called me the night they first went out, breathless with excitement. "Mom, I think I really like this guy. He's smart and funny, and he makes me feel like I can be completely myself around him." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. I'm excited to meet him." But months passed without that meeting happening. Sarah would mention David in our conversations, sharing stories about dates and trips they'd taken together. But somehow there was never a convenient time for me to visit, or for them to come see me. "I really want you two to meet," Sarah would say. "But work is so crazy right now, and David's family is coming to visit next weekend, and we're planning a trip to his college reunion." There was always something, always a reason why this meeting couldn't happen just yet. When I finally did meet David, it was at their engagement party. Sarah had called to tell me they were engaged, and while I was happy for her, I was also hurt that I hadn't been included in the lead-up to the proposal. She hadn't asked for my opinion about him, hadn't brought him to meet me before they decided to spend their lives together. "It all happened so fast," she explained, when I gently expressed my disappointment. "We just knew we were right for each other." "Yeah." David seemed nice enough at the party, polite, successful, clearly devoted to Sarah. But there was something about the way he looked at me, a kind of assessing coolness, that made me uncomfortable. When I tried to share stories about Sarah's childhood or ask about their wedding plans, he would steer the conversation in different directions. "Sarah doesn't need to hear embarrassing stories about herself," he said with a laugh when I started to tell an anecdote about her first school play. "We're more interested in looking forward than backward." I felt dismissed, minimized, but Sarah seemed so happy that I pushed my concerns aside. This was her choice, her life. My job was to be supportive. The wedding planning, Sarah's wedding, should have been one of the most joyful experiences we could share. Instead, it became a series of small conflicts and hurt feelings that I tried my best to navigate gracefully. Sarah had very specific ideas about what she wanted, and most of those ideas seemed to involve keeping me at arm's length. She chose her maid of honor without consulting me. She picked a venue I'd never seen. She selected a dress during a shopping trip with David's mother and sister, a trip I wasn't invited to. "I thought we could look at dresses together," I said, when she told me she'd found the perfect one. "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd love it. Mrs. Patterson has such good taste, and she really helped me narrow down the options." Mrs. Patterson, David's mother, a woman who had known Sarah for less than a year, was now helping her choose her wedding dress, while I, the woman who had raised her, supported her, sacrificed everything for her, was relegated to hearing about it after the fact. When I tried to express my feelings about being excluded, Sarah got defensive. "You're being too sensitive, Mom. It's not about you. It's about finding the right dress." "But I'm your mother. I always thought we'd share that moment." "We are sharing it. I'm telling you about it now." It wasn't the same, and we both knew it. The pattern continued throughout the wedding planning process. I was informed about decisions rather than included in making them. I was given specific, limited roles to play rather than being treated as a valued advisor. When I offered to help with costs, I was told they had it covered. When I suggested traditions I'd hoped we might include, I was told they were outdated or unnecessary. The wedding itself was beautiful. Sarah looked radiant. David seemed genuinely happy, and I tried to focus on celebrating their love rather than dwelling on my own disappointments. But sitting in the front row, watching my daughter begin her new life with someone else's family surrounding her, I felt more alone than I had since she was born. During the reception, I barely got 5 minutes alone with Sarah. She was constantly surrounded by David's relatives, his college friends, his coworkers. When I finally managed to get her attention, she seemed distracted, impatient. "Mom, I need to go thank the Hendersons for coming. Can we talk later?" Later never came. By the time the reception ended, she was exhausted and ready to leave for her honeymoon. Our goodbye was rushed, perfunctory. Love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. Love you too, sweetheart. Have a wonderful trip. I watched them drive away and felt something shift inside me. For the first time in Sarah's life, I was truly secondary. I was no longer her primary relationship, her go-to person, her safe haven. That role had been filled by someone else, and I wasn't sure where that left me. Life as a daughter-in-law, the first year of Sarah's marriage, was when our relationship really began to change in ways I couldn't ignore. Our phone calls became less frequent and shorter. When I called her, she often seemed rushed or distracted. When she called me, it was usually to share news quickly rather than to have real conversations. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" I'd ask. "Fine, Mom. Busy with work. David got promoted, and we're thinking about buying a house." "That's exciting. Tell me about the houses you're looking at." "I can't really talk long. David's making dinner, and I promised I'd help." These conversations left me feeling hungry for more connection, more depth. I missed the long, wandering talks we used to have about everything and nothing. I missed feeling like I mattered to her day-to-day life. When they did buy a house, I offered to help with the move, with decorating, with anything they might need. Sarah thanked me politely, but said they had it handled. When I suggested I could visit to see the new place, she said they wanted to get settled first, maybe in a few months, when we're more organized. A few months turned into 6 months, then 8. When I finally did visit, I could see why Sarah had been hesitant to have me there. The house was beautiful, expensive, decorated entirely by David's mother, who had apparently spent weeks helping them choose furniture and arrange rooms. "Mrs. Patterson has such an eye for design," Sarah said, giving me a tour. She found this amazing antique dining set, and she knew exactly how to arrange the living room to make it feel cozy. I complimented everything appropriately, but inside I was heartbroken. Another milestone in my daughter's life that I hadn't been part of. Another role that had been filled by someone else. The visit was awkward in ways that our time together had never been before. Sarah seemed nervous, constantly checking her phone and mentioning things she needed to do. David was polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with my presence in his space. I left after one night instead of the 3 I'd originally planned. "Thanks for coming, Mom," Sarah said as she walked me to my car. "It was good to see you." Good to see me, as if I were an acquaintance, rather than the woman who had devoted her life to raising her. The grandchild. When Sarah called to tell me she was pregnant, I cried with joy. This would be it, the thing that would bring us close again. I would be a grandmother, and surely that would give me a meaningful role in her life once more. "I'm so excited, Mom," she said, and for the first time in years, her voice sounded like the Sarah I remembered. "I keep thinking about all the things you taught me about taking care of babies. I'm going to need your advice." My heart soared. She would need me again. I would be important to her and to my grandchild. We would share this experience the way mothers and daughters were supposed to. But as her pregnancy progressed, I found myself once again relegated to the sidelines. David's mother was the one who went to doctor's appointments when Sarah needed support. She was the one who helped plan the nursery, who threw the baby shower, who Sarah turned to with questions and concerns. I was kept informed, but not involved. I received updates, but wasn't consulted. When I offered to help with the baby shower, I was told it was already planned. When I asked about being present for the birth, I was told they wanted to keep it small and intimate. "Just David and me," Sarah explained. "We want those first moments to be private." I understood, or tried to, but it stung to be excluded from what I'd always imagined would be one of the most important moments we'd share. When my grandson James was born, I met him when he was 3 days old. Sarah looked exhausted, but radiant, and David was clearly besotted with his son. I held James and felt that familiar surge of overwhelming love, the same feeling I'd had when Sarah was born. But my time with him was limited and supervised. When he cried, Sarah or David immediately took him from me. When I offered to help with feedings or diaper changes, I was told they had a system worked out. When I suggested I could stay for a few days to help out, I was told they were fine. The pediatrician says it's important for babies to bond primarily with their parents in the first few weeks, Sarah said. We don't want to confuse him. I left feeling like an outsider to my own grandson's life. The pattern. Over the next few years, the pattern became clear and painful. I was included in Sarah's life just enough to keep up appearances, but I was never truly integrated into their family dynamic. I was invited to birthday parties, but not asked to help plan them. I was welcome to visit, but only at scheduled times that worked for their schedule. I could babysit James occasionally, but only when their regular childcare fell through. David's parents, meanwhile, were deeply embedded in their daily lives. They had keys to the house. They were called when James was sick. They went on family vacations and were included in holiday traditions. They were grandparents in the full sense of the word. I was something less. A visiting grandmother, a distant relative, someone to be tolerated rather than embraced. When I tried to talk to Sarah about feeling excluded, she became defensive. You're being dramatic, Mom. We include you in everything important. But I never feel like I'm really part of your life anymore. I feel like an outsider. That's not true. You're imagining things. But I wasn't imagining the phone calls that went unreturned for days. I wasn't imagining the holidays I spent alone while she celebrated with David's family. I wasn't imagining the way conversations ended abruptly when I called at inconvenient times. Something fundamental had changed in our relationship, and Sarah seemed either unwilling or unable to acknowledge it. The breaking point. The incident that led to the blocked number happened 3 months ago on James's 3rd birthday. I had planned to attend his party, had bought him a gift, had arranged my work schedule around the event. 2 days before the party, Sarah called to uninvite me. Mom, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to keep the party small this year. David's parents are coming, and his sister's family, and with all the kids, it's just going to be too chaotic. But I'm his grandmother too, I said, unable to hide my hurt. I know, and I'm sorry. Maybe we can celebrate with you separately, just the 3 of us. When? I don't know. Soon, after things calm down. I hung up feeling devastated. I was being erased from my grandson's birthday celebration, dismissed as if my relationship with him didn't matter. The too chaotic excuse was particularly painful, as if my presence would somehow disrupt their perfect family gathering. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to their house and sat in my car across the street, watching the party through their front window. I could see James running around in a Superman costume, see David's parents playing with him, see Sarah laughing and relaxed in a way she never seemed to be when I was around. It was pathetic and desperate, and I knew it. But I needed to see my grandson on his birthday, even if it was from a distance. The next morning, I called Sarah to confront her about the real reason I'd been excluded. The conversation quickly escalated into the worst fight we'd ever had. You're suffocating me, she finally screamed. You've been suffocating me my entire life. I can't breathe with you, constantly needing to be part of everything. Needing to be part of everything? I'm your mother. And I'm 36 years old. I don't need you managing my life anymore. I'm not trying to manage your life. I'm trying to be part of it. It's the same thing. You can't accept that I have my own family now, that David and James are my priority. I never asked to be your priority. I just wanted to matter. You do matter, but not the way you want to matter. Not the way you think you deserve to matter. The words hit me like physical blows. Not the way I deserve to matter. As if my years of love and sacrifice had earned me nothing. As if being her mother was just an accident of biology rather than a lifetime of devotion. Sarah, I said, my voice breaking, I love you. I've always loved you. Everything I've done has been for you. That's the problem, Mom. Everything you've done has been for me. Don't you see how unhealthy that is? Don't you see how it makes me feel guilty for having my own life? The call ended with her hanging up on me. That was 3 months ago, and it was the last time we spoke. The silence, I tried calling back that same day, but she didn't answer. I tried again the next day and the next. I left voicemails that went unreturned. I sent texts that weren't acknowledged. After 2 weeks of silence, I drove to her house, but no one answered the door, even though I could see lights on inside. Finally, I called from a different number, my work phone, and she answered immediately. Hello? Sarah, it's Mom. The line went quiet for a long moment. Mom, I can't do this right now. Please, sweetheart, can we just talk? I miss you so much. I need space, Mom. I need time to figure things out. How much time? I don't know. Maybe a lot of time. Maybe we need to take a break from each other. A break? Sarah, I'm your mother. We don't take breaks from family. Yes, we do. Sometimes we have to. The line went dead, and when I tried calling back, I got a busy signal. Then an automated message saying the number was no longer in service. But I knew better. She had blocked me. That was when I understood that this wasn't a temporary fight or a misunderstanding that could be resolved with an apology. This was a deliberate decision to cut me out of her life. My daughter, the child I had raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, had decided she was better off without me. The aftermath, the first few weeks after being blocked, were the darkest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the silence where Sarah's voice used to be. I called in sick to work more days than I went in. I sat by my phone waiting for a message that never came. I found myself driving by their house at random times, hoping to catch a glimpse of James in the yard or Sarah getting the mail. I never approached them, but I needed to know they were still there, still existing in the world, even if I wasn't allowed to be part of that world. I considered reaching out through mutual friends, through other family members, through social media. I drafted dozens of letters and emails that I never sent. I rehearsed conversations in my head, imagining what I would say if she ever gave me the chance to explain myself. But slowly, painfully, I began to understand that this wasn't about anything I could fix with the right words or gestures. This was about Sarah's need to establish boundaries that I had been unable or unwilling to respect. This was about her feeling suffocated by my love, in a way that I had never intended but couldn't deny. Looking back with brutal honesty, I could see the patterns she was talking about. I had made her the center of my universe in a way that was probably unhealthy for both of us. I had sacrificed my own identity so completely that I didn't know who I was without the role of active motherhood. I had held on so tightly to our relationship that I had pushed her away, but understanding it didn't make it hurt any less. The reckoning 6 weeks after being blocked, I had what I can only describe as a breakdown. I was standing in the grocery store, looking at the baby food aisle and thinking about James, when I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. A store employee had to call an ambulance because I was hyperventilating and couldn't calm down. At the hospital, they referred me to a therapist specializing in family relationships. Dr. Martinez was a kind woman about my age who listened without judgment as I told her the whole story. "It sounds like you're grieving," she said after our first session, "but Sarah isn't dead." "No, but the relationship you had with her is gone. You're mourning the loss of that connection, and that's a real loss that deserves to be grieved." Over the next several months, Dr. Martinez helped me begin to understand the dynamics that had led to this crisis. She helped me see how my identity had become so wrapped up in being Sarah's mother that I had lost track of who I was as an individual. She helped me recognize how my well-intentioned love had sometimes crossed the line into controlling behavior. "Love without boundaries isn't healthy love," she said during one session. "It becomes a burden rather than a gift." It was painful to acknowledge, but I could see the truth in her words. I had loved Sarah so intensely, so completely, that I had made her responsible for my emotional well-being. When she tried to establish her independence, I had interpreted it as rejection rather than healthy development. "What do I do now?" I asked. You learn to love her differently, from a distance, with respect for her choices, even when those choices hurt you. And if she never wants to see me again, then you learn to find meaning and joy in your life without her constant presence. It seemed impossible, but Dr. Martinez was patient with my resistance to change. Slowly, gradually, I began to work on building an identity that wasn't entirely dependent on being someone's mother, the new life. It's been almost 3 years since Sarah blocked my number. 3 years since I've heard her voice or seen my grandson. 3 years of learning to live with a kind of pain I never imagined possible. But I've also learned things about myself that I might never have discovered otherwise. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I've learned that I have interests and talents that have nothing to do with being a parent. I've learned that it's possible to love someone completely while still maintaining your own sense of self. I went back to school and became a dental hygienist instructor, something I'd always thought about but never pursued because I was too busy focusing on Sarah's dreams. I volunteer at a literacy program, helping adults learn to read. I've made new friends, women who are dealing with their own family challenges, and understand the complexity of loving children who have grown up and away. I still think about Sarah every day. I still wonder about James and whether he remembers me. I still hope that someday she'll be ready to let me back into her life in whatever capacity she's comfortable with. But I've stopped waiting for that day to start living. Last month, I moved into a smaller apartment closer to downtown. The house where I'd raised Sarah had become a museum of memories, a place where I was stuck in the past. The new apartment is bright and modern, decorated with things I chose because I liked them rather than because they fit into the life I'd built around someone else. I've started dating again, something I'd never seriously considered, because I was so focused on being available for Sarah. There's a man named Robert who teaches at the community college where I work. He's kind and patient and seems to understand that I'm learning how to be in an adult relationship for the first time. "You raised a daughter," he said when I told him about the situation. "That's an incredible accomplishment, regardless of how things are between you now." "But I lost her." "You didn't lose her. She's still out there, living the life you helped prepare her for. Maybe someday she'll realize what a gift that was." The hope I still drive by Sarah's house sometimes, though not as often as I used to. Last month, I saw James playing in the front yard. Taller now, his baby features maturing into those of a little boy. He was laughing at something, spinning in circles with his arms outstretched, completely absorbed in his own joy. I felt the familiar ache of longing, but also something else: pride. He looked happy and healthy and secure. Whatever else had gone wrong in our family, Sarah was clearly doing a good job raising him. She had learned from my example, but also from my mistakes, creating the kind of loving but boundaried relationship that I had never quite managed. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what successful parenting looks like: raising children who are strong enough to set limits with you when they need to, even when it breaks your heart. I don't know if Sarah will ever unblock my number. I don't know if James will grow up knowing he has another grandmother who loves him. I don't know if there's room,